Buckle up, everyone, because today we are diving headfirst into It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover.
Oh, yeah, this one's been everywhere online.
Seriously, it's like the book everyone's either loving or, well, having some very strong opinions about.
That's putting it mildly.
To get to the bottom of this, we've got, like, a mountain of stuff to go through.
Let's say Goodreads reviews, and those are all over the place.
Yep, got those. Plus the whole Wikipedia summary to give us the plot rundown. Even peeked at the Barnes & Noble description just to see how they sell it.
And don't forget, there are all those articles out there analyzing the book and even the new movie they made.
So our mission today is to help you figure out why this book is such a phenomenon, but also, why it's stirring up so much controversy.
Yeah.
And we'll do it all without spoiling the big twist for anyone who hasn't read it yet. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so imagine this.
Yes.
You've got Lily, fresh out of college, moves to Boston to start her dream business.
Ambitious, love it.
And of course she meets this, totally charming neurosurgeon named Ryle.
Okay, classic romance novel setup so far.
Right, but here's the thing. Ryle is totally against relationships. And there's this mysterious past love, Atlas, kind of looming in the background.
So there's that too good to be true vibe right off the bat.
Exactly. And speaking of being hooked, just look at those Goodreads reviews. Nearly 4 million ratings. I mean, that's insane.
Oh, that's a lot of people with opinions.
But the thing is, those opinions are totally split down the middle. You've got some people calling it life-changing and others.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say they're not holding back on the criticism.
You see this a lot with books that tackle, sensitive or controversial topics.
Yeah, and It Ends With Us, despite being shelved as romance, it goes there.
Goes where?
Domestic violence. It's a major theme that, unfolds as the story goes on, so it kind of blindsides some readers.
So they go in expecting one thing and get hit with something completely different.
Right. There's this one Goodreads review that really stuck with me. It said, and I'm quoting here, "People spend so much time wondering why the women don't leave. Where are all the people who wonder why the men are even abusive?"
That's a good point.
Right. I feel like that perfectly sums up how complex this book gets.
Yeah.
It's not giving you easy answers.
And that's what makes portraying something like domestic violence in fiction so tricky. You don't want to glorify it, obviously.
Of course not.
But if you oversimplify it, then you lose the nuances, the reality of the situation.
And Hoover's approach, it's got people praising it for being real, but also there's that criticism that maybe it romanticizes the abuse. It's interesting, too, because some people are comparing It Ends With Us to My Dark Vanessa.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
That book is much darker in how it deals with abuse.
So it's like a whole debate about the tone. Is It Ends With Us too light for such a heavy topic?
Exactly. And then you've got the Goodreads reviews that are all about how strong Lily is as a character. But then others are calling Ryle completely irredeemable.
It makes you think about how we respond to characters and stories, right?
Totally. Is it about, taking sides? Or is it more about trying to understand how messy and complicated this situation is?
I think that's a question each reader has to answer for themselves. Are we looking for someone to root for? Or are we trying to grapple with their choices, even if we don't agree with them? And don't forget, the movie throws another wrench into things.
Oh, yeah. The casting is interesting.
Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni playing Lily and Ryle, they're quite a bit older than the characters in the book.
So how does that change things?
Well, a younger Lily, you might see her as naive, right?
Maybe.
But with an older Lily, her decision to stay in that relationship, it carries a lot more weight. It's a more conscious choice.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. Casting can really make a difference in how we see a story. And then, of course, there's Atlas, Lily's first love, who comes back into the picture.
The old what-if scenario.
Some readers saw him as a bit of a white knight figure, the idealized rescuer. They felt like that was unrealistic. But for others, Atlas coming back was like this glimmer of hope, a chance for Lily to escape the abusive relationship.
But is it really that simple?
That's the question. And it's important to remember what Colleen Hoover herself said in her author's note. She wanted to explore the why behind why people stay in abusive situations.
So she's not offering easy answers, more like trying to understand the complexity of it all.
Exactly. And she's been open about how her own experiences with domestic violence influenced the book.
So it's not just a story, it's coming from a very real place.
Right. She's not sugarcoating anything. This isn't some fairy tale. It's messy. It's real life. Speaking of messy, we got to talk about Hoover's writing style.
Oh, here we go.
It's full of big emotions, and she uses these phrases that people either love or hate, like That whole just keep swimming thing.
Yeah, that's a divisive one.
Right. Is it powerful or cheesy? People are really split on that.
I think those strong reactions to her style show how personal reading is. It's not just the plot, it's how the author delivers it and whether it clicks with you.
True, some people want that emotional intensity, others find it too much. And then there are the flat-out criticisms of the book. Some reviewers didn't like the names, like Lily Bloom, the florist. A little on the nose, maybe.
Uh-huh, yeah, I can see that.
And then there's the age difference between Atlas and Lily when they first meet. Some people found that uncomfortable.
Yeah, that can be a sensitive issue.
And, oh my gosh, the whole thing with Lily writing letters to Ellen DeGeneres in her diary.
Wait, what?
It just felt out of place.
It's interesting how those critiques about the writing exist alongside the bigger conversation about how the book handles domestic violence.
Right. Some people can look past the stylistic stuff if the emotional core of the story grabs them. Others, it's a deal breaker. So even with all the criticisms, It Ends With Us is definitely more than just a light romance. It's sparking discussions, making people uncomfortable even.
Which, that says something about its impact.
Right. It's getting under people's skin, making them think. What does that say about its success as a book?
Well, it's definitely getting people talking. It's undeniably popular, but how it affects each person, that's really individual. It raises awareness about domestic violence, but it also puts the responsibility on us as readers to think critically about those tough themes.
And here's a thought-provoking question to consider. The title itself, It Ends With Us, implies breaking a cycle. But does that really happen for all the characters in the book?
Ooh, good question. That's something we'll have to unpack as we go deeper into this whole thing. It's interesting because even though we're left wondering about that ending, Hoover gives us a lot to think about throughout the story, especially with Lily's internal struggle. We see her trying to deal with her feelings for Ryle even after experiencing the abuse.
Like she makes excuses for him.
Yeah, clings to that hope he'll change. It's tough to read sometimes.
And this is where I think Hoover's own connection to the story really hits hard. We know her mom went through something similar, stayed in an abusive relationship for years. So it's not just fiction,
Well, absolutely. It's like she's channeling real-life experience to show us just how complicated those emotions are in these situations.
It adds this whole other layer of, authenticity to Lily's conflict. Readers connect with her on a deeper level, even if they don't agree with the choices she's making.
Right. It's like she's saying, hey, it's not always black and white. Leaving isn't simple. This book really makes you confront those assumptions we often have about why people stay.
Totally. We judge from the outside, just leave.
Yeah.
But Hoover makes us consider what's going on inside Lily's head, all those conflicting emotions.
And that's what I think makes this book different from a typical romance. It's like digging into the messy parts of relationships, the dark side of love that doesn't always make it into those happily ever after stories.
There's this one Goodreads review that said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm pretty sure some people are buying this book just for the cover, which I kind of get. There's a disconnect between the marketing and the actual content.
There is a contrast, for sure. But whether they're drawn to it for the cover or the buzz, millions of people are connecting with this story. And that brings us back to that question, why?
Yeah, what is it about this book, flaws and all, that resonates with so many readers? Speaking of flaws, let's address those head on, because they're definitely part of what's causing all the controversy. Like, we talk about the names, Lily Bloom, the florist,
Yeah.
coming. A little obvious, right?
Haha, yeah. Hoover's writing can lean towards the melodramatic, but you know what? That's part of her appeal, especially for younger readers. They dig those big emotions, the grand gestures.
It's almost like you can't help but react strongly, whether you love it or hate it. She gets you talking.
Exactly. Strong reactions, even negative ones, mean the writing is doing something. It's making you think, making you feel. And that's successful writing, even if it's controversial.
It makes you wonder about what the book is really saying, about breaking free from these harmful patterns. Does it actually offer any solutions? Like, let's look at that ending again. Does it really live up to the title, It Ends With Us? Is that cycle of abuse actually broken?
That ending, it's ambiguous, which I find both frustrating and interesting. Lily chooses to leave Ryle, but that doesn't mean everything magically gets better. He still has visitation rights with their daughter, and there's this whole question of whether he'll actually change.
And then there's the whole reunion with Atlas. It seems hopeful, but also maybe a little too perfect,
Right. Is Alice really the solution to all of Lily's problems? Can their relationship be truly healthy after all they've been through? Hoover leaves us hanging.
And I think that forces us to accept that there are no easy answers in real life either. Things don't just wrap up neatly. It's messy.
It totally mirrors life's complexities. No fairy tale endings here.
And that brings us back to Hoover's whole point, doesn't it? She's not trying to give us a simple happy ending. She's showing us how messy and real domestic violence is and how hard it is to heal from it.
It's a process, not a quick fix.
Okay, there's this one part of the book that I have to ask you about. It seems to divide people. Lily's whole thing about writing letters to Ellen DeGeneres in her diary. Some people find it cute, relatable even. Others, it's just weird. Where do you land on that?
It's definitely a unique choice, and it does clash a little with the overall serious tone of the book. Maybe it's meant to add some levity, or maybe it's showing how much Lily needs someone to confide in, even if it's a celebrity.
Like, Ellen becomes the stand-in for the reader, the person Lily is pouring her heart out to. Which, knowing how much people are talking about this book online, is kind of funny.
Haha, it's very meta. It could also be a reflection of the book's target audience, young women who might relate to having a celebrity they look up to, like Ellen.
And we have to remember, this was written before, the stuff that came out about Ellen's behavior behind the scenes. So back then, it probably didn't feel so strange. But now, yeah, it hasn't aged well. Adds to that feeling that the book isn't quite in touch with reality sometimes.
Speaking of out of touch, there's another thing that people are debating online. The portrayal of Ryle's wealth. The guy's a successful neurosurgeon, lives in a luxury apartment. He's basically what some would call a high-value man.
And some readers see that as glorifying wealth and privilege, which makes it harder to sympathize with Lily, like she's trapped in this gilded cage.
That's a valid criticism. The book doesn't really deal with the socioeconomic factors that contribute to domestic violence. It's more about the individual characters and their psychology, which can feel a bit limited.
Yeah, we're supposed to believe that Ryle is basically a good guy who just has anger issues. But his money and status definitely protect him from consequences, and the book doesn't address that.
And that can be frustrating for readers who are looking for a deeper exploration of those power dynamics. Domestic violence affects people from all walks of life, and money often plays a huge role.
So even if Hoover isn't intentionally glorifying wealth, it's something that needs a closer look, especially with the movie adaptation. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, both very successful and attractive actors, bring this added layer of glamour to those roles.
And if we connect all this back to how the book's been received, it's obvious It Ends With Us has tapped into something big. It's sparking conversations about domestic violence, about relationships, about the role of wealth in our society.
And it's doing all this while being praised, criticized, and analyzed all over the internet. It's a full-blown phenomenon.
That level of engagement, even if it's driven by controversy, is pretty remarkable. It means the book is evoking emotions, making people think. Love it or hate it, It Ends With Us has definitely left its mark.
And its impact goes beyond the pages of the book, right?
Yeah.
It sparked this whole movement of readers sharing their own stories, seeking support, demanding more awareness about abuse.
Which, at the end of the day, that's a good thing, even if the book itself has its imperfections. It Ends With Us may not be perfect, but it's definitely a powerful catalyst for conversation and hopefully for positive change.
And then there's the sequel. It starts with us. It picks up where the first book left off, focusing on Lily's relationship with Atlas, but it also goes into Ryle's past, trying to explain why he became abusive.
The sequel has gotten mixed reviews, which, I mean, you kind of expect with a topic this sensitive. Some people appreciate that Hoover tried to give Ryle a backstory to show he's human without excusing what he did.
Others, though, feel like it's a step back, like it softens the message of the first book by giving Ryle too much sympathy.
It's a tough balance to strike. You want to acknowledge that abusers are often victims themselves. They've experienced trauma that shaped them. But at the same time, you can't excuse their actions or the harm they caused. It Starts With Us tries to walk that line, but whether it succeeds or not, well, that's for each reader to decide.
That brings up this bigger question about fiction and social issues. Can a book like It Ends With Us, even with its issues, actually make a difference in the real world?
I think it can. Fiction has this power to create empathy, to challenge our assumptions, to get us talking about things that are hard to talk about. By showing us the human side of an issue like domestic violence, books like this can help break down the stigma and encourage people to reach out for help.
And that's what really matters, right? Creating a world where victims feel safe to speak up, where abusers are held accountable, and where those cycles of violence are finally broken.
Exactly. It Ends With Us may not be perfect, but it's started a conversation that we need to be having. And with the movie out now, that conversation is only going to get bigger and louder. It's a story that people will be talking about for a long time.
It really shows the power of Colleen Hoover's writing. Love it or hate it, it ends with us has left a mark on our culture.
And before we wrap up, we want to leave you with something to think about. If this book is about breaking cycles, what cycles do you see being broken in your own life? And what steps are you taking to create a healthier, more fulfilling future for yourself and the people you care about?
Wow, that's really makes you think, huh? It takes all this stuff we've been talking about and makes it personal.
It does, yeah. It's that self-reflection that I think makes these deep dives so worthwhile. We can pick apart a book, debate it, but in the end, what matters is how it hits you, what it makes you do.
We've covered a lot, that's for sure. The book, the movie, what Hoover was going for, how people are reacting, even the sequel. But ultimately, what it ends with us means, that's up to each person who reads it.
And that's the cool thing about art, right? It can mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people, and we all go on our own journeys because of it.
That's why we love doing this. We're not just giving you the SparkNotes version. We're hoping to get those brain gears turning, make you think, debate, and come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. We don't want to tell you what to think. We want to help you figure out how to think about these things.
And hopefully we've kept you entertained along the way, maybe surprised you a little, or even made you rethink some of your own ideas.
That's always a win in my book.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into It Ends With Us, we want to leave you with one last thought. The title itself, it's like this statement of hope, of taking your power back, breaking free from those patterns that hurt you.
But it also reminds us that ending a cycle, well, that takes guts. It takes action and a real commitment to building a better future.
It's not easy, that's for sure, but it's worth it every single time.
Thanks for joining us on this wild ride into the world of It Ends With Us.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into something that's got everyone talking and shaking things up.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep fighting to create a world where everyone can say with confidence, it ends with us.